Reproductive system, you guys. So basically, what we're looking at is in the male, you have testes that produce the sperm, and they have half of the genetic material versus the eggs that, again, develop in the ovaries and has half of the genetic material. There are a lot of sex hormones are involved, and a lot of physiology of the reproductive system linked with having the idea of the hormonal control and the negative feedback, positive feedback. And these hormones, or known as the sex hormones, they are pretty much androgen or testosterone in male and estrogen and progesterone in female. All right? So what is this role of these hormones? Again, they play an important role in development, in function of the reproductive system, in sexual behavior, okay, and sexual drive, growth and development of many of our organs linked to these sex hormones as well. So we'll discuss the role of the sex hormone, but right now I would like to go and jump into the areas that you need to know about the male reproductive system. So in the inside of these testes, there are tiny little tubes. These tubes inside are known as seminiferous tubule. In anatomy, you probably know that this seminiferous tubule is where the sperm production takes place. So the sperms are produced in here. Then, they're still not mature, so they need to go to the epididymis. In the epididymis is where the sperm become mature and motile. What that means is they're now capable of swimming. All right? During the process of ejaculation, all right, it contracts epididymis, and now the sperm is going to go towards the ductus deferens or vas deferens. So we go to another picture in here, and now you could see what happens in here. This is the vas deferens right there. The vas deferens or ductus deferens loop around the bladder, and then you the sperms encounter three accessory glands that you need to know. One is called seminal vesicle, two is called prostate gland, three is called bulbourethral glands. All right? Collectively, they're known as accessory glands. These accessory glands produce semen. Semen is the nutritive and all the content that the sperms require in order to become viable and productive and healthy. All right? So let's quickly go over the seminal vesicle. Seminal vesicle produce the most of the semen. About 60 to 65% of the semen produced by seminal vesicle. These are rich in fructose, which is, again, gives the energy to the sperm. Remember, energy of the sperm is important because they wanted to propel their flagella or the tail. Sperms consist of the head region, the midpiece of the body, and then the tail. All right? So in the midpiece or the body, there are a lot of mitochondria. Mitochondria, again, can break down the sugar to generate the energy. Now, the ATP that are being released from it, it's useful to propel the tail, which is a lot of the tail is just made out of microtubule, part of the cytoskeletal that we discussed. In the head region, you have half of the genetic material, 23 chromosomes. We discussed this already, all right? And at the tip region, right over here, this area is known as acrosome, and the acrosome contains digestive enzyme. This enzyme is important because when it gets to the vicinity of the egg, pretend this side is the egg, they can release this and they can digest this for penetration. This sperm, once it penetrates, several things happens in the egg. Basically, there is a chemical and electrical events that preventing other sperms to come in. All right, so polyaspermy does not take place in this case. Many sperm cannot fertilize the single egg. The first the sperm hits it, basically it digests the outer coating. You probably remember this as a zona pellucida of the egg. Is now these 23 chromosomes and 23 chromosomes in the egg is now they are merging with one another. So now 23 chromosomes from the sperm head, all right, which is the digestive coating is out, and 23 chromosomes from the female egg, all right. Now you got the full set. You got 46 chromosomes. Now the sperm can carry X chromosome or Y chromosome. If it carries the X chromosomes, then you'll have a daughter because this one is always the X. The egg always has the X. A sperm who carries the Y chromosome, therefore it can fertilize the X, you get XY, or the male. Either way, let's go back and take a look at, so we pretty much went over the seminal vesicle. Seminal vesicle also has, on the nutritive material, also contains prostaglandin. Prostaglandin helps to kind of like make the mucus lining of the vagina thinner, so that way they can swim and reach the egg. All right, next up you have prostate gland. Prostate gland is a donut-shaped structure right over here, and again they produce substances to activate the sperm. All right. Sometimes this prostate gland get enlarged, especially with age. Men might have prostate gland enlargement, and sometimes cancer. All right. So there is a test known as PSA, which is called prostate specific antigen. Basically, it's a protein that produced by the prostate gland. And if it's overactive, most likely because it's enlarged and so on, usually the PSA can be higher. So they look for that. When you do your blood test done, as you age, you might have to do this every other year, all right? And this kind of like indirectly shows the activity of the prostate gland. But with other technology and so on, you could actually take a look at the size of the prostate to see if any enlargement occurs. You do a digital rectal exam. If this part is enlarging, for example, through the anal canal, that could be figured out as well. So in terms of the urinary system, notice that in the middle right over here, this is the ejaculatory duct. Again, here is the vas deferens right here, and then this is the ejaculatory duct. You might have heard about vasectomy when these tubes, there's two of them, cut and tied up. Now the sperm can no longer exit, all right? So basically they will get digested and processed by macrophages or other white blood cells, etc. So this is a permanent solution for preventing pregnancy. But anyways, right over here, ejaculatory duct, here is the prostatic urethra. So the urine coming over here to the urethra and the sperms along with all those nutritive substances, semen, coming through the same, they are being shared by the urethra. This is not the case in female, by the way. In male, urethra shared by two systems of urinary and reproductive system. Okay? Now, what will happen if the enlargement occurs? Sometimes it could obstruct here, sometimes it could obstruct this as well. So individual might have a painful urination, also not able to control the urination as well because they are being obstructed, the pressure goes up and down in here, and sometimes, you cannot control that, okay? Regardless, the next up is the bulbourethral gland. You could see it in here. This is the third and the final accessory glands. Bulbourethral gland produces alkaline substances. Alkaline substances is basically a base, all right? Now, why do we need a base? Remember, because this urethra is shared by the urinary system,
What happened is the urine is semi-acidic, if you recall, because we get rid of the hydrogen ion in the process of secretion, remember? So the residues of the hydrogen ion, they remain in here, which again, they are pretty good because it protects us against, microorganism entering and so on, but also is not so good for the sperms that are encountering this acidic condition because they will get eliminated basically. And the body wants to produce the most sperm and perhaps the most chances for continuation of life. In this case, bulbourethral gland produces some alkaline substances to neutralize this urethra. So when the sperms along with the other stuff are coming, they're not going to get impacted. That's the whole idea about that. All right? So now we're going over the erectile tissue. Erectile tissues, you named it in the anatomy, corpus cavernosum, corpus sponginosum. Basically, they can get engorged with blood. So blood vessels coming into these areas, it could get expanded, it could get enlarged, and as a result of that, erection might take place. All right? So because this erectile tissue, they can get engorged with blood. There's a lot of nerve endings in here as well, especially the tip part, which again is responsible for sexual stimulation, etc. The testes have a tendency to be away from the body temperature. So there is a reason for that, is because you require about 2 to 3 degrees less than the body temperature for sperm production to take place. If there is the same as a body temperature, you're not going to get that much sperm building up in here. Temperature is one factor. So the cremaster muscles can ascend the testes or descend the testes, depends on the temperature, and again, this is kind of like a regulation of the temperature, perhaps. All right, so I guess tight jeans are not really good. All right, I guess if you work in a bakery and you're exposed into a hot environment all the time, your sperm count might be lower. Okay, chemical and drugs can also affect the sperm production and the numbers as well. As you know, not many people talk about it these days because they wanted to promote their product, but a lot of marijuana actually can lower your sperm count tremendously. All right, and sometimes to a point that people may not be able to have kids anymore. You only need 20% viable sperm, okay, for successive fertilization. Now, another difference between male and female is that male can produce a sperm throughout life. That does not mean that there is not problem with it. There might be more problems with the DNA in the chromosomes, for example, of the older person. There's probably more error to it, okay? The sperm count would be a lot lower, for example, but they could still have viable sperm. Okay, so that part is out of the way. The nitric oxide, if you probably heard about nitric oxide or the major content in Viagra. Viagra, as you know, people that have an inability to have erection, which are impotents, they take Viagra. Viagra is basically a vasodilator. Okay? So a receptor for nitric oxide in the blood vessels leading to the penis, so they are dilating. So therefore you're increasing the more flow to this organ. But a lot of young individuals, for whatever reason, they think it's funny, or they think like, they can increase their sexual performance or whatnot, or even for pranks. There have been many cases of pranks. They give Viagra to their friends and they're videotaping them, laughing and so on. There are serious complications. These are not drugs to be messed with. When you are having heart trouble, you have atherosclerosis, your blood vessels are partially blocked, as people that are eating a lot of meat, for example, the presenter was talking about it.
It's a good idea to have a plant-based diet and so on. When you have that, and all of a sudden you have a lot of vasodilators taking the blood, going to the penis, for example, there's going to be less blood elsewhere. When there's less blood elsewhere, that could be heart attack right there. Okay, that could be a stroke right there. Okay, so there are serious side effects associated with it, and you should probably consult your doctor. Go ahead.
Did they find Viagra looking for heart medication though?
I'm sorry?
I believe that Viagra was actually discovered when they were looking for a heart med for people with cardio, like.
Yes, but really depends. First of all, I think, if I recall it correctly, the person died of a heart attack, gave them some Viagra, but they noticed that he had an erection, okay, even though you know the person had a heart attack, and that's how it got discovered. Okay. But there are a lot of other substitute, herbal medicine or other things that does the same thing basically. All right. Okay, there's got to be a control to the spermatogenesis. What is spermatogenesis? Is making the sperm. So I go over the process of spermatogenesis, and fine, system or 2, and there is some physiology related, so pay attention on this part. This is called brain testicular axis. What that means is the brain hormones that are produced and released there influences other things, okay? So hypothalamus, as you know, was the boss. Anterior pituitary gland is also related. So hypothalamus control and produce certain hormone. It goes to anterior pituitary gland. This one, it gives it a green light. The green light for that, it happens to be GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. Pituitary gland can release 2 hormones, LH and FSH. This is basically the green light. What does that mean? That means when this hormone is up, then you have higher LH and higher FSH. When you have low, that means it's kind of like a red light now. Lower LH, lower FSH. Now, what is LH and FSH? Well, the name actually comes from what these hormones do in female. Luteinizing hormone versus follicle stimulating hormone. They're both, you learn that on Wednesday, what they do. But right now, we're going to go ahead and take a look at what is their role in male reproductive system. And they are pretty much involved in negative feedback system. So let's go ahead and take a look at what they do.
Right here is the hypothalamus. Again, GnRH gives the green light to the anterior pituitary. They release LH and FSH. Now, let's track down the FSH first. It has the S, so just write a sperm. It's responsible for a sperm production. Now, here is one of the tube in the seminiferous tubule. Earlier in my lecture, I told you seminiferous tubule is what happens. The sperm production happens. You can see the sperms are being made. They go inside of this tube, which is the lumen, which links to the epidermis, which goes into the vas deferens and go through all those areas that we discussed earlier. So one of the things that causes this sperm to be produced is FSH. So guess what? When you have a low sperm count, we need the GnRH to be high, we need the FSH to be high, and then you produce more sperms. All right? But there is another side to it. They need a little help. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at luteinizing hormone now. Luteinizing hormone they will reach the interstitial cells. These interstitial cells exist outside of the seminiferous tubule. All right, so notice that this is outside of this tube. Inside of the testes, we mentioned there are a lot of seminiferous tubule. This is outside of it. Interstitial cells. What do? They release testosterone. What is a testosterone or androgen? What does a testosterone do? One, there is an androgen binding protein which testosterone can bind and help with the development. That's one. Number two, testosterone actually have other targets. As you know, muscle mass is related to the testosterone. That's why people take in the testosterone, because the muscle mass can increase, right? So in general, testosterone is responsible for secondary sex characteristics in male. Those things that are kind of like give recognition as being male most of the time. Like oilier skin, all right? More muscle mass, deepening of the voice, more facial hair, okay? All of those that is usually responsible for masculinity is because of the effect of testosterone, all right? However, testosterone has to be monitored as well. People take in extra testosterone because they want to make more muscle mass. But now what it does, when you have way too much testosterone, there is a negative feedback system going on. So when you have too much testosterone, now you wanted less testosterone. So this increase in testosterone is going to inhibit GnRH and LH, and therefore the testosterone is going to be leveled off. That's when you have higher testosterone. But guess what? It also lowers the FSH. So people that are taking a lot of anabolic steroid, guess what? Their sperm counts are actually pretty low because they keep taking testosterone. And due to the negative feedback system that I just showed you, you want to lower the testosterone when it's extremely high. So you got to lower the GnRH. And when you're lowering the GnRH, both LH and FSH gets lower. More testosterone you take, the lower the sperm count will be. All right? What if the sperm count is low because a person maybe ejaculated or was involved in sexual intercourse, etc.? You need to remake them now because the count is low. You need to bring it back up. Negative feedback system. So there are hormones known as inhibin that basically can inhibit the GnRH and therefore inhibit the LH and FSH, and as a result of that, this hormone is going to cause more sperm production. On the same hand, if you have lower sperm count, then there will be lower inhibin. There will be lower testosterone. So as a result of that, there will be higher GnRH, higher LH, higher FSH. The testosterone is going to go up, and so as the sperm production. All right? So again, now you have a higher sperm count, you need to lower it. Inhibin produce, you're lowering it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's a negative feedback. All right? On Wednesday, you will discover that all these hormones, LH, FSH, GnRH, they play a significant role in the female reproductive system. Female reproductive system is a little bit more complicated. If you get a chance, take a look at it, read ahead of time. I don't know if I'm going to have time to give you one last quiz, but if I do, I will probably going to give you guys a quiz on digestive system, all right, on Wednesday. So prepare that ahead of time. I might give you the last quiz. If you haven't picked up your quiz, you could pick it up. If you have any other additional questions or whatnot, you could, see me later. But this is to the extent that I covered. Now, if I didn't cover something, then don't worry too much about that. We're probably not going to be involved in your video. All right, see you guys on Wednesday. Bring out all
I think he'll go over that on Wednesday.
Remember, the people that did not go tonight, you guys have to go on Wednesday or you get 0. Right? So come prepared, ready to go.
Guys, do you want to meet really quick outside just to discuss our presentation?
All right, have a good night.